Hey, Sheila Keeter here. I am the teacher for inclusion, and today we are going to talk about the ninth grade English book list. So let's go ahead and get started. Just like if you watched my 10th grade video or my 11th grade video, just like those book lists and education in general, the list hasn't changed all that much. So we're going to talk about some of the books that are classics that are on the list and some of the books that I think should be on the list. So the first one is Of Mice and Men, which is a story of friendship between George and Lenny. And George is a very pessimistic, short-tempered guy, and Lenny is this really large man with limited mental capabilities. In the book, they're itinerant farmers, and they go from one farm to another in order to survive, just for their basic needs, and they're trying to save up to buy a farm of their own. Lenny gets into a lot of trouble because when he gets scared, he grabs onto things, and he's done this with a puppy, he's done it with a woman's dress, and then in the end, he does it with Curly's wife and ends up killing her. So George kills Lenny as a mercy killing in order to save him from an angry mob coming after him. Now, although I love this story, absolutely love this story, I find that students find it difficult to connect with itinerant farm workers. They just have too much of trouble connecting. They get into the story at the very end when the woman dies, but prior to that, they just don't connect. So for that reason, I would take it off of the list. Night. Night is a classic, should be. It's a memoir by Elie Wiesel. And it's about the Holocaust, and it's a journey that begins from the boy being kicked out of his home to living in the ghetto, to going on the train to Auschwitz, to watching multiple people being tortured and killed during the Holocaust. And it is a story that every human being should read. The only thing that I think that should be different is that it would be nice to put night into the 10th grade year, because 9th grade students are still too immature. And by immature, I don't mean in a negative way. I just mean they're not quite ready for it yet. There's a scene in Night where a child is hung, and because the child is light, the neck doesn't break, and the child just hangs there for a length of time, and it's just way too much for 9th graders. So if we can move that book, Night, from the 9th grade list to the 10th grade list, that would be better. Then we have our classic Romeo and Juliet, which of course you just can't get rid of. But I will say that aside from Romeo and Juliet, I think it's time to stop looking so closely at Shakespeare. I don't think we need to read a Shakespeare play every single year. I don't think kids connect with Macbeth and Hamlet. I think that the reason why they can connect with Romeo and Juliet is because they're teenagers and they're in love, and it's a tragic love story. So I do believe we should keep Romeo and Juliet. However, not so sure about the other Shakespearean plays. The Odyssey, the great king who sets out to fight in the Trojan War and ends up years away from home. Odysseus is a little bit of a difficult, complex character for me. He's seen as this great war hero. However, he ends up getting all of his men killed because of his ego. And if you read closely the Odyssey, you'll see that he has a lot of flaws, and the flaws that he has create him to be a poor leader. And if that's supposed to be the main quality in him is that he's this great hero, then there's a problem in that logic. It is, however, a good book to teach Greek mythology. So there is that component to it. And for that reason, I think the Odyssey could stay on the list. To Kill a Mockingbird is a classic. And I think that this book is constantly on the list of possibly getting taken off the high school English list. And I do not believe that that should happen at all. The story is so very true, holds so much truth in it, that we can find similarities in history that match up to this story. For one, Emmett Till, the story, if you don't know the background for To Kill a Mockingbird, Tom Robinson, an African-American man, is falsely accused of rape by a younger teenage girl, and he is innocent, and it is obvious that he is innocent, but he is still sentenced to death. And while I read this with my students, we also supplement it with true stories that match during this time period. So for that reason, To Kill a Mockingbird should definitely stay on the list. Then we have The Giver. The Giver recently was placed on the 6th grade English list, which was really strange to me because there is a thing called the Lexile score, which means students at that grade level can read appropriately and can read the vocabulary. However, the maturity level just isn't there to understand the themes and the author's messages and that sort of thing. 9th grade is the perfect grade level for students to kind of grapple with these ideas of this utopian kind of world where people are all equal and they don't have feelings and they don't have fear. And it's the first grade level where students can actually kind of grapple with that and have good collaborative conversations. So for that reason, I think The Giver should stay on the list. Instead of Night, I put in here The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. It is a story about the Holocaust, and I won't get too much into that, but it is a boy who lives with a father who is kind of Hitler's right-hand man. And the boy and his family live on site, not on site, but just outside the fence of Auschwitz. And this little boy is really naive, and he thinks that the boys inside the camp are wearing striped pajamas. And at one point, he decides to go on an adventure, put on some striped pajamas, and sneaks into the concentration camp, where there is this really twisted sense of justice in what happens. The other two that I think I would supplement with this is The Diary of Anne Frank graphic novel and White Bird graphic novel. The Stars Beneath Our Feet is a story I would definitely add to the 9th grade list. It's about a boy who has lost his brother, and he is trying to heal and find ways to cope with that. And he ends up coping by building with Legos, and he makes some friends that were unlikely for him to make. And it's just a great story of love and friendship and loss. As Brave as You is by Jason Reynolds, and it's a great book about a boy who is taken by his parents who are about to separate and get divorced. He's taken to his grandparents and spends a lot of time there. And it's just a great coming of age story that I think would fit nicely on the 9th grade list. That is all that I have for now. I hope that you got some ideas for your 9th grade classroom, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.